What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza Podcast. We are back this week again without Vince. It's a holiday weekend here in the States. We both had pretty busy weekends, so wasn't able to make anything happen, but he will be back soon. I know, the crowd is clamoring for Vince to return, so he will be back soon. No worries on that. But we are back, the Pazza Podcast, this week after back-to-back victories for Inter, 1-0 victories for Inter. A scoreline that you haven't really seen from Inter, especially last season in the campaign with 0 titles, 0 titoli. The 1-0 scoreline was a scoreline that Inter could not maintain or keep or make happen. And the fact that we have gotten that really two 1-0 score lines in the last week to keep us afloat ahead of Milan and Napoli, it might signal that there's a change in mentality from this group. And that's something that we've been calling for since maybe even when Inzaghi was coach, before the 5-0 drubbing in against Paris Saint-Germain. This mentality, this getting over the line, even if you have to struggle, that's the mentality that wins you Scudetti, and that's what we've been calling for. So very good to see. We, like I said, 2-1-0 wins in the week, midweek against Lecce away in the south of Italy, to Lecce. It's a match that I got to listen to, but I wasn't able to watch since it came on while I was at work. From what I gathered from the match and just talking to other people and listening to other podcasts, it was a game that Inter, probably the worst game or one of the worst games of the season. And we scored through Pio late, which is great to see Pio Esposito get the goal, one of our own youngster. But the performance was not great. Anytime you go and get a result, though, away in the Serie A, you can't be too upset about it. So shout outs to Inter for getting the 1-0 result. I mean, you can even see Milan yesterday against Lecce. Same away, still struggled and got just a 1-0 result. So the one thing I did hear is that Mkhitaryan was not great. Lautaro was not great. Pretty much the performances of most everyone was not great in the Lecce match. So following that match midweek up, despite winning 1-0, huge goal by Pio. Inter, how were you going to respond away again at Udinese, a team that early in the season you went up 1-0 on and then conceded 2 goals and never really was able to get back into the match? Really, it was just a cross and Salah kind of game for Inter. There was no creativity, no spark, no nothing like that. So what was the response going to be from this squad? And what was Kivu? What was the mentality this squad was going to have? Would Kivu have these guys in the right mentality? Let's start with the Udinese, or let's continue on now with the Udinese match, the match that I actually did get to watch. And we'll talk a little more in depth. A little bit rotated squad, not as much as maybe midweek against Lecce, I wanted to see a little more rotation. This side, a little bit of rotation. We start with Jan Sommer in goal with Pep Martinez being out. Rumors are he'll be back for the midweek clash. Jan Bisek, Manuel Akanji, Carlos Augusto making up that back three. Glad to see that Bastoni is getting a rest and that Kivu trusts Augusto to go in there whenever Bastoni needs a rest. Luis Enrique, Inhiki, Nicolo Barella, Zielinski, Mkhitaryan, Di Marco. So Zielinski coming in, playing that Registo role for Hakan, and Mkhitaryan being preferred over Sucic or Fratesi in that midfield. And we started with Esposito and Lautaro. So Esposito getting rewarded for his good midweek performance, because from what it sounded like, he should have had maybe at least 2 goals. So obviously, Kivu, it's come out several times this year that he is a coach that likes to reward players for their performance. So him giving Esposito the minutes to start is big for the young player, but also for us as Interisti, knowing that this isn't like Inzaghi. It's not a hierarchy. It's a you perform, you play kind of deal. And that's really ultimately what it should be. So getting into the match against Udinese, it was a match that Inter better from what I understand. Like I said, Lecce, I heard it was terrible. Inter was better in this match than in that Lecce match. And you could see it right early on. There was really good passing through the midfield. I would say Nicolo Barella again kind of looked a little off, and then Henrik Mkhitaryan. So I didn't, like I said, see the Lecce match, but I did see this match. And if you mean to tell me that Petar Sucic is doing this bad in training that he cannot usurp Mkhitaryan, be at least our fourth option in midfield behind Zielinski Hakan and Nicolo Barella, you mean to tell me Henrik Mkhitaryan is the preferred first player off the bench? Then, I mean, Sucic, I know he's young, he's going to develop and everything, but that doesn't look good for his development because what I saw from Mkhitaryan today was nothing short of abysmal. Misplaced passes, running like a chicken with his head cut off, shots seemingly going nowhere, just not even winning balls back. I don't understand. And this is the second coach in the row, Inzaghi and now Kivu. And again, like I said, we're not seeing what's going on in training. Sucic could be laying absolute stinkers in training. And we also have to remember he's only 21, 22. But I don't want to see Mkhitaryan on the field anymore. I hear Johnny from interviews saying the same thing. I hear the guys from Interjections saying the same thing. I think Uncle Sharma is really the only one that's really a little more on the Mkhitaryan train, but there's no way we can continue and progress as a squad with playing a 37-year-old who doesn't offer goals, doesn't offer assists, doesn't really offer anything in the build-up and the attack. Positionally, he offers something potentially. But other than that, like it's a 37-year-old. What is he bringing to this team to benefit us, not only this season, a season that we're fighting for a Scudetto, a Coppa Italia, a Champions League. We're still in all of these competitions. He's not benefiting anything for us in this season as far as those competitions. And then he's not going to be with us next season. So why is he getting the minutes here? I would have even preferred Davide Fratesi here. Like something different. I'm so tired of seeing Mkhitaryan name on the sheet. And I know if you've listened to this podcast this season a couple months ago when Mkhitaryan was out, I had a moment of delusion where using cognitive and critical thinking, I said our midfield is struggling. The only reason that could be is maybe because Mkhitaryan is injured. And I kind of got to where I maybe missed him. Like I said, delusionally. Don't get it twisted. That was a moment of weakness. This guy should not be playing any more for Inter this season unless it's Coppa Italia or against, a team like Pisa at the weekend or somebody like in the bottom relegation. We have to see what we have from Sucic. We have to, if Fratese's not going to get sold, which it seems more and more unlikely, we have to get out of Fratesi something, whether it's goals or something. We got to get something from him. And it just doesn't benefit us anymore to have a player this old who doesn't offer anything. I've gone on this rant before about Mkhitaryan, so I'm going to end it there. Don't need to say much more. But from the first half, what I got was we were up 1-0. And let's back it up just a little bit longer. That goal by Lautaro today in the first half. Mamma mia. This goal was something spectacular. A lot of people talk about Lautaro, me being one of them, how streaky he is. But I've heard a lot of people mention how Lautaro is not that player that goes in and gets a goal, makes a goal out of nothing. Well, here's an example of him making a goal out of nothing. This was absolutely all Lautaro. I mean, the pass forward from Zielinski was great. The layoff from Pio was great. But Lautaro had everything to do here. Everything. In the box, dribbling to his left, stops, take a defender away, outside of the right boot, around the other defender, on the outside of Akoi, who had made some great saves. Big body. He had to place it perfectly. This was just a brilliant Lauti goal. It was absolutely brilliant. It's one that no one's going to talk about for whatever reason. But this is Lautaro. He's the guy that he frustrates us whenever he goes streaky. But like I said a week or two ago, we live and die by Lautaro. You know, we harp and complain about all these big games Lautaro hasn't scored in. If he scores, we probably win. If he plays a better game against Napoli, we probably win. Like, he is our team. He makes or breaks our team. We can have 10 huge performances around and struggle to put the ball in the back of the net. Lautaro, he's the one that gets in the position to create and score these chances. And when he's on, we are by far the gap between us and the rest of the league is this. When Lautaro is, it's a huge gap. When Lautaro is not on, the gap shrinks. The gap shrinks, and that's been the difference in these big games. And that is the criticism. I don't want to say you can't criticize Lautaro. You should criticize him for not showing up in these big matches because I think that's the difference in these big matches a lot of the times is him and then how weak we are in the midfield. But if we don't have Lautaro, if he goes on a 3 months of being injured or an injury patch like Thuram, we're fucked because it is him that's making the difference in these big games. And if he starts clicking in these big games, we're going to start winning them. The captain is how we live and die. And it's apparent. I mean, he leads the line, and he's the one that Inter depends on. You know, you can make the case, Napoli, they depend on Scott McTominay. Milan, you could maybe say Pulisic. Based off the past couple of weeks, it seems like Rabiot is the one that they depend on there in Milan. Not really sure. Either argument I think is right. But we depend on Lautaro. And so these matches where he scores a goal like this, it's huge. And performs like this, it's huge. Grande Lauti is a brilliant goal. Yeah, and I just wanted to back to that. Let's halftime. This is going to be another short episode, guys, without Vince on here. It's a couple days after. We'll resume the normal next week length of episodes, but this one will be another short one. So my halftime thoughts, 1-0 at half. That is the same score line against Udinese earlier in the season that we started out with and that we ultimately squandered. So mentally, these guys have to know and remember this, and they have to come out with a sense of urgency and steel to not allow Udinese to get back in the match. Brilliant goal by Lautaro. What was better, the Zielinski pass to Pio, the Pio layoff for Lautaro, or Lautaro's goal and movement and creation in the box? You guys let me know down in the comments. Zielinski, I thought was brilliant in the first half. Really, if you watch that first half, that assist to Lautaro, that was about the third time he had done a pass like that split through the midfield and got to the last line of defense. You know, Hakan, we usually see him doing that over the top from in deep. Zielinski was a little further forward and was playing it on the ground. There was one time he played in a brilliant ball. I want to say Lautaro was making another run, and I think either Bisek or Luis Enrique cut the ball off before it could make it to Lautaro. You could see Lautaro was pissed off. But again, Zielinski was dangerous. His passing, his movement, he was absolutely brilliant in that first half. Lautaro's all-around performance, he looked up for it. I said in the first half, at this point, Mkhitaryan and Barella are kind of hurting us more than they are benefiting us in the midfield. So we have to get more from the midfield to continue dominating and finishing this match out. Akanji was a little weak in the first half, in my opinion. And I said, let's get an early goal. If we get an early goal, the game will be over. I think if we would have got an early goal in the first 5 to 10 minutes, Udinese would have pretty much just shut up shop. But the longer it gets 1-0, the more they get more confident, especially being at home. So yeah, and then the only change in the first half I wanted to see was Mkhitaryan come out for either Sucic or Fratesi. Full time thoughts. The second half, I was working a little more, so I wasn't able to watch it as intently. But I do have some full time thoughts. My full time thoughts for me, I thought Zielinski was man of the match. Zielinski, he's on a purple patch of form that really only DiMarco or Lautaro, you could say, has equaled him or gotten close to him over the last month or two. And it's really good to see, especially when the rest of our midfield, Barella, Mkhitaryan, them are struggling. It's nice that we have Zielinski in there that has the quality and change of pace and different ideas to benefit the rest of the team. I do think Barella improved a lot in that second half and started impacting the match, which was nice to see. You know, he's done a lot of performances over the last couple months where it's been 45 minutes of not great and 45 minutes of improvement. If we can get a full 90 of Barella, you know, and him start to put those all in full 90 performances, we'll be all right. Never really felt threatened by Udinese at all the entire match. You know, even though it was 1-0 and these score lines sometimes scare us against Lecce, maybe a little more worried, but Udinese, no, wasn't worried. And let me rephrase earlier. I said on the road at Lecce. We were actually at the San Siro, so my bad. Correction on that. We weren't on the road at Lecce. So yeah, my bad. Correction. Kivu learned from his mistakes. I forget which match it was a couple weeks ago where we tried to shut down a match by bringing on Diouf and Fratesi. Those were the last two subs he made. This match, Kivu, to shut down the match, he brought on Stefan De Vrij and Francesco Acerbi. He still brought on Fratesi, but to shut down this match completely, his last sub was bringing on Stefan De Vrij. He knew that's what he had to do to shut this match out. So really great on Kivu. It seems like he's learning within this season, which is good to see, but also crazy if you think about it, because we're still 3 points up on Milan, 6 point up on Napoli, and Kivu is still learning. He's still learning game in and game out, different changes and stuff like that. Just imagine, you know, with this experience that he's gaining, he's starting to put it all together, and this is how Inter slowly is starting to click a little bit. Jan Sommer. I think we need to talk about Jan Sommer. This is the topic that has been the hot topic for the last 4 or 5 months. Everyone and their mom and their nona and their nono and their dad and their cousin, everybody wants to see Jan Sommer out of goal. And guys, I get it. He's 37. It's kind of the Mkhitaryan thing. But I think the discourse on Jan Sommer, likening him to the decline of Handanovic. I mean, you've heard me say this before. I think that's a joke. If people who say that really don't remember how bad Handanovic got, some of the goals he gave away, you know, nowhere close to the mistakes that people are saying Jan Sommer has made. I mean, Handanovic would literally hit the ball into the net as an own goal sometimes. Like, we have not gotten there with Jan Sommer. Maybe we have PTSD as Inter fans, but if you really think about it and watch the highlights of the decline of Handanovic, we're nowhere near there. And then it's every time there's a goal, I know exactly what the discourse is going to be. It's going to be, oh, one shot on goal, Jan Sommer let up a goal. I mean, that argument, again, I've said it before, it holds no water. There's no intellectual conversation being here. You're looking at a stat line and saying, oh, we had one shot on goal and they scored. Guy, Jan Sommer, what a bum. But then on the flip side, against Lecce, deflected shot in the second half, Lecce, before we even scored. Quick reaction. Granted, it wasn't the craziest save. Quick reaction save. Jan Sommer keeps it 0-0. Didn't hear a single peep from anybody saying, oh, good save. Not even oh, Jan Sommer made a save. It's probably one he should have made, but Jan Sommer made a save. I even heard some people say, I don't even think Jan Sommer had anything to do. There was nothing he did. Against Udinese, first half, Udinese, great strike, great shot from distance. Jan Sommer, great save. Again, not the craziest of saves, but a great save. Nothing. This discourse against Jan Sommer, it's unfair. We want, after the Milan match, we want Mike Maignan. Did you not see what Maignan did in the Coppa Italia semifinal? One of the worst blunders I've ever seen in my life. No one mentions that. Di Gregorio. How many times have I heard his name? What is he doing at Juve? Caprile. He's the one that's going to replace Jan Sommer. How many blunders have we seen Caprile make in the past 2 months? A little bit. I can count at least two. But it's Jan Sommer that gets the hate from this fan base. It's a scapegoat. We are afraid to throw Hakan Çalhanoğlu under the bus. We are afraid to throw Alessandro Bastoni under the bus. We are afraid to throw Marcus Thuram under the bus. We're afraid to throw Nicolo Barella under the bus. We're afraid to throw Federico Di Marco under the bus. All these names that we have grown to love over the past 4 or 5 seasons, they need to do better. We need to replace them potentially. Jan Sommer has made a mistake or two. Like I said, the Juve match, bad. I don't see the Milan save where Pulisic scored as being a big error from Jan Sommer. Really, the Juve match is the one that concerns me. There's been goals where people have scored in the box with 4 defenders around them, going up for a header, no one jumps for it, and somehow that's Jan Sommer's fault. It's a joke. And when he makes saves like this to keep us either tied 0-0 to keep us into the game, and I'm acknowledging they're not the greatest saves, but it's a big save. Or keeping us up 1-0. We need to acknowledge that too. And what Jan Sommer is doing is he's doing enough. And we're still in the lead. Now, don't get it twisted. I would like to see Pep Martinez. I would love to see him this week in the Champions League. I'd love to see him, in Coppa Italia. And maybe when we play relegation sides. We need to see what we got out of this guy. I'm more talking about the discourse of Jan Sommer being the worst goalkeeper in Serie A from what I hear. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. No one can look in the mirror and truly believe that Jan Sommer is the worst or one of the worst goalkeepers in Serie A. Statistically, I'm sure it says that. But I don't give a flying fuck about statistics. I see Inter 3 points up on the table of Milan, 6 point up on Napoli. I see a goalkeeper 2 times this week when called upon making a save. I see us with only 17 goals conceded versus everybody else having, or there's 3 or 4 having 16, and then I think Roma has 12. So this whole disaster class rhetoric, we have 17. There's 1, 2, 3 teams with 16. No, 2. Milan and Como. And then Roma have 12. Us, Napoli, and Juve have 17. Lazio have 16. So we're right there as one of the best defensive records in the league. Just stop it. Support Jan Sommer. This is going to be the last 4 or 5 months we have of him. I will be the first to come out and make a 10-minute video apologizing if he has a huge Radu-like error that leads to us losing the Scudetto. But until that happens, it's obvious that Inzaghi trusted Jan Sommer, and now we have Kivu trusting Jan Sommer. Kivu's not an idiot. If it was that big of a deal, Jan Sommer would not be playing. We've already talked about how it's a hierarchy, performances. Jan Sommer would not be playing if Jan Sommer was really hurting Inter. So we need people, you need to start, realizing that at this point, we're not going to get Pep Martinez as a starting goalkeeper, probably for the rest of the season. Just go ahead and get that through your skull. Stop commenting on people's posts and stuff. It's not going to happen, realistically, unless something major happens. And B, get this thought and disillusion out of your head that Jan Sommer is the worst goalkeeper Inter has ever had, because it's not true. It's maybe recency in your head, you think so, but objectively it's not true. And that's all I'm going to say about Jan Sommer. He had a great save today. I think he put in a good performance, and I think he's been solid the past couple months. But it also goes hand in hand. Our team defending has been solid the past couple months. We're not giving away chances, and that's what we did 2 seasons ago. We're not giving away big chances. So that is also a thing we need to harp on and congratulate and really, discourse about is how good we are at not conceding chances right now. Last but not least, 3 points, clean sheet. We moved on. Unfortunately, Napoli got a hard fought 1-0 victory against Sassuolo, where I think Sassuolo kind of should have maybe put in a goal. Milan gets a pretty dominant performance win over Lecce, and all three at the top get a 1-0 victory this weekend. If you look, it's kind of funny. Kind of shows the status of where these clubs are right now, how they got their victory. Inter scores, has a load of chances, can't put them away, never really troubled, but kind of, rightfully goes out and puts the nail in the coffin early and wins the match. Napoli score early, struggle the rest of the game, but embodying that Conte spirit. And then Milan playing more so midweek against Como, not so much against Lecce. They kind of dominated Lecce, but playing that Allegri terrorist football of just sitting back, soaking up all the pressure, not really doing much. This is the three teams, three distinct styles, three distinct ideas, three distinct squads. And this is what's going to be pushing forward for the Scudetto. I think, this weekend is very decisive. We play Pisa, Milan play, I want to say Roma, and I want to say Napoli have a big match as well. Let's see. Juve, Napoli, and Milan, Roma. This could be a big window, a big weekend for Inter. We play Pisa on Friday. If we get all 3 points there, we're up 6 on Milan, up 9 on Napoli. Milan playing Roma, who's got the best defensive record in the league. That's going to be a really terrible, boring game. And then we got Napoli, Juve, who's coming off of a bad result at the weekend. But nonetheless, Napoli, Juve, it's going to be a big match. We could be looking at a 6-point lead over Milan, a 7, 8, 9-point lead over Napoli. This is huge. This is really huge. We talked before or after the Supercoppa about how big, the next 4 matches in the league was, and getting 12 points would be huge. Ending with that Napoli match, and we got 10. That's pretty big. I think some people, Inter fans, after the Supercoppa would have been surprised if we would have gotten 8 points, and we got 10. So really good work from the squad, pushing forward. We're in a very difficult section of our season, but there's light at the end of this section. And hopefully at the end of this section, leading into that match against Juve in February, hopefully that ultimately at that point we have a big enough gap where we're comfortable enough. I think we can beat Juve. I think we will beat Juve, but we have a comfortable enough gap on the rest of the league that we can afford a slip up or two. Not saying I mean, don't get it twisted. I don't want to lose to Juve, and I don't think we will. But even games in and around that, we have tricky matches where we play on the road against Lecce the weekend after, and I think that's going to be maybe when Champions League matches are coming in. So that could be a tough weekend match. We play Milan a couple weeks later and Atalanta back-to-back weeks. So having this gap is going to be huge if we can, build a bigger gap. Because we know we can't be dependent on other squads in Serie A. They typically bend over for Napoli or Milan or Juve, and we got to go out and be the ones controlling our destiny. So, yeah, big week for Inter. 2 big, hard-fought 1-0 victories. Guys, I appreciate all the support. Like I said, we're going to get Vince back on next week and get him with some different thoughts. I'll be back up in the office, so the glare, and I'll have my contacts, so the glare won't be hitting as hard. If you guys have any comments or anything, let me know down below, especially on the Jan Sommer situation. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And as always, Forza Inter.